Before I get into the pasta, let me just explain the front-facing camera for a little bit. I've decided to take some changes on the channel lately since the demonetization of my channel and so many other horror YouTubers. I'm trying to switch up the video primarily and also the audio eventually using different background tracks. But I'm trying to get away from the static images or looping video. That's not to say that they will completely disappear, because they won't definitely not disappear. This is only going to run maybe 3 or 4 minutes on the beginning of every video. But I also have a couple of creepypasta movies that I'm working on. That might be 10-minute long narrations, but also involve a lot of visual triggers. So, I hope you enjoy this pasta, and thank you for listening. Ever had a group of friends that were more like your siblings? Well, my group and I were like that. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Lorenzo. I was born and raised somewhere in Italy, and so were my friends, Sandro and Vincent. Now, when I say somewhere in Italy, I don't want to give my exact location. I want to keep some sort of privacy. And we used to be together all the time. We lived in the same city. We shared the same apartment. We studied the same courses, and we went out almost every single night. And I know Sandro since high school. He was my only real friend during school, and Sandro and I were obsessed with comics and sci-fi, fantasy, all those sort of geeky things. And that's why we decided to study filmmaking. To do our own things and, to create our own masterpieces. As soon as we finished school, we moved from the south to the north, and we rented an apartment and everything was fine. And on the first day of university, we met Vincent. And he was kind of like us, but man, was he so much cooler. And yeah, I hate admitting it, but it's the truth. Sandro and I were never extremely popular, but Vincent was. He was constantly introducing girls to Sandro and I. So, of course, we never complained whether he was cooler or not. And after a couple months, Vincent moved in with us, and that's how it remained during the rest of our university life. By the time we graduated, we had the idea of doing a major project. Our budget wasn't amazingly high, but it was something. We had done other projects in the past, but this one was one we had envisioned the most. We dreamt about this all the time. Our idea was simple. We were going to go to Africa to shoot a film. Vincent and I were going to be actors, and of course, the editors, directors, and a bunch of other different things. And Sandra, he was going to do almost the same, with the exception that he was not going to be an actor. He was going to be the one recording the film. The cameraman, as we said. And Joanna and Claudia, 2 friends of Vincent, were also going with us, and were going to appear in our film. The idea of the film was doing a documentary on some of the tribes in Africa. We had the money for the tickets and everything seemed to be fine. We did our research for many months, and I'd say even a year or 2 before going there. We did research trying to find out where we could go. And we wanted to go to a place rather close to a particular tribe. And the 3 of us paid for our own tickets and for the production. But Vincent, whose family is, they're rich. And they paid for our hotel, safari, tours, and other expenses. So, maybe our idea wasn't the freshest and the most original, but we were sure we were going to have a good time. We traveled there during July. It was carefully planned. The trip was long, but it was fun. And once we got to our destination, we were greeted at the airport by Zula, our guide. He was a young man in his late 20s, so he was around our age. We were all in our mid-20s. Zula was fun. He was carefree and a great guide overall. For a couple of weeks, we did have fun. We partied, we traveled, and of course, we shot some scenes. They were good, in all honesty, but, they weren't anything out of the ordinary. But one night, we were drinking with Zula, and we asked him about the tribes. We had already visited one tribe during our second week. They were so sweet and nice, but that's not what we wanted to have on record. We wanted to see a different tribe. One, a little bit more ruthless. Vincent and I had done some research, so we knew there were some cannibal tribes around. Well, we knew about the internet myth, but as soon as drunk Zula confirmed this and told us some stories, there was no doubt at all. The myth was real, and we needed to go check it out ourselves. We ended up convincing Zula to take us closer to this tribe. We were all excited about it. Even the girls. Well, all of us with one exception. Sandro. He thought our idea was ridiculous and careless and, well, maybe it was. He was the only one who was fully sober. Sandro refused to go, but we ended up convincing him. And after all, we needed our cameraman. Zula grabbed the Jeep and we all got in. We must have driven for 2 hours until we got to a certain place. It looked different to everywhere else where we had been so far. The environment seemed different. There was a lot of vegetation, and it was not what we expected, but it was interesting. Zula then explained to us that we absolutely had to be quiet and stay by his side, but giving instructions to a whole bunch of drunks, well, it's not the best idea. He left the Jeep somewhere, and then we walked for around 15 minutes. It was very late, and for what I remembered, it was around 2 or 3 in the morning. We got somewhere that looked like a hill when he told us to get on the ground and be quiet. We did as he said. He then grabbed a couple of binoculars and gave one to me and one to Sandro. What we saw through the binoculars is just what we expected and wanted to see. A mysterious tribal camp. The tribe looked a little different to others we saw in the past. It was full of corpses and skulls hanging around. It was just what we wanted to see. And I gave my binoculars to Vincent, which wasn't a very good idea. And as soon as he took a peek, the first thing he did was scream. Zula immediately told us to be quiet and lay lower on the ground. And after a couple of minutes, we checked again, and everything seemed fine. No one seemed to have noticed us. We kept looking at them, taking turns with the binoculars. The girls were getting obnoxious, wanting to watch, so we let them. After observing for a minute or two, Claudia started screaming. Zula immediately grabbed her and covered her mouth. "Shit, what are you doing?" he said to her. "They're eating somebody," Claudia continued. We immediately started freaking out. "We gotta go. We have to get out of here," Zula started telling us. "Where the fuck did you bring us, dude?" Vincent screamed at Zula as he pushed him. "You told me to bring you here," Zula screamed. Now, if you want to be safe before they come, we gotta get the fuck out of here," he continued. We ran as fast as we could with Sandro documenting everything. We ran and tried not to be loud. But unfortunately, we weren't fast enough. Joanna collapsed, and we stopped to see what was going on. And then we noticed she had something stuck in her back. It was some sort of weapon. And less than a minute later, Claudia collapsed as well, and one of those things had been thrown to her neck. She looked immediately dead. We started to run again. "Do not stop under any circumstances," Azula said. We finally saw the jeep. Zula was the first one getting there, then Vincent, then myself. As Sandra was not far away, he got tackled by someone, and taking a better look, it was one of the people from the tribe. My first reaction was trying to get out of the jeep to help him, no matter if I lost my life in the process, but I got pulled back in the car by Zula and Vincent. They closed the door, locked the car, and drove as fast as I've ever seen. During the ride, Vincent was in shock, and I didn't stop insulting them and screaming for them leaving Sandro behind. And Zula, he kept on saying there was no other choice, and eventually Vincent agreed with him. He hugged me, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but I began to cry. After driving for a while, and after making sure we were safe and nobody was after us, we had a conversation. The deal was that we were going to go to the police and explain what had happened, just changing the information a little bit. We were going to tell them that we were doing a trip near the area where the tribe was located, and Zula had told us not to go there, and didn't let us, but we found a way and escaped from him. He stayed at the hotel sleeping, having no idea where we had gone, and we went to the place and got attacked. Then Zula could not get in trouble for taking us there, and Vincent and I were afraid of getting in trouble as well, so we thought this was the best thing to do. We spoke to the authorities and to some other people, went to the hospital for a couple days, and, that was pretty much it. We stayed at the hotel a couple of days before going back to Italy. And I was incredibly sad because of Sandro. He had always been my best friend. And I could tell Vincent and Zula were sad as well, but they were convinced we did the best we could. The time to go back home had come. We said goodbye to Zula at the same airport we had met, and we went back to Italy. Once we got there, though, things were not as calm as we expected. Not only our families were waiting, but there were hundreds of people, including reporters, cameras, and other things, and I started having an anxiety attack. I was too traumatized by everything that had happened. Luckily, my parents and my little brother grabbed me and took me back to their place. After a month staying at my parents', I went back to the apartment I shared with Sandro and Vincent. And, it was about time I had returned. Once I opened the door to my apartment, Vincent was there. Now, I hadn't had contact with anybody but my family for a month, so he was curious to tell me everything he had been up to. Such things included a trip to the Maldives and to Russia, and Vincent seemed not too disturbed anymore. He also said he had spoken to the families of Sandro, Claudia, and Joanna, and that his family had offered to help them financially. I didn't agree with anything he had done, but at the same time, I didn't have the energy to argue over anything. 2 months passed, and I was still disturbed and traumatized. I was working from home, taking some editing projects, and barely went out or spoke to anyone. One afternoon, I received a phone call. It was from Sandro's father. He sounded happy, and he told me that they had found Sandro. Well, my heart started racing. I was so happy at first, but then I started to get a little nervous. I mean, what if he were upset? After all, we did kind of leave him behind. During the evening, I told Vincent about it, but his reaction was complete happiness, not anxiety at all. And I informed him that Sandro would be arriving in 4 days. We barely had information about his physical state, and all his dad said is that he was still in Africa, and he seemed fine. The only problem was severe dehydration. A week passed, but still no signs of Sandro. I called his family, but they didn't answer the phone. And then 2 weeks later, during the evening, Vincent and I were playing video games when our door opened. Wouldn't you believe it? There he was. Sandro. He was standing there, looking completely clean and fine, like nothing had happened. The only difference is that he had shaved his head. I threw the controller and gave him a big hug, and I started to cry. Don't worry, we all do what we have to do to survive, he said. Vincent then came and said hi to him. It was all so bizarre, and Sandro seemed to be fine, almost as if nothing had happened. We asked him questions about how he managed to survive, and he told us the tribe we had encountered was, in fact, a cannibalistic tribe. They had eaten the corpses of Claudia and Joanna, and 2 other people that were there, just some locals that got in the way. Sandro, however, he managed to escape. Sandro explained he had managed to earn the affection of some people in the tribe due to the camera. He showed them how to film and record different things, and they seemed fascinated by that. He was treated good, and eventually, when he had the chance, he escaped. He hiked for many days until he found a village, and then some people helped him. The next day, I was on some social media to contact Zola, and to tell him the good news about Sandro in case he didn't know. However, when I went to his profile, people were mourning him. I started to search for news article and found Zola had died 2 weeks ago. It was a very tragic death, and they believe an animal ate him. And I told the guys about it. Vincent's reactions were just like mine. However, Sandro acted very normal. He was physically okay, but emotionally, he just seemed so empty. Not only animals eat people. Remember? Sandro said and then left to his room. Vincent and I looked at each other with utter confusion. What the hell did he mean by that? Did he know something about it? We tried to forget about Sandro's statement and eventually went to bed around 11 o'clock at night. But I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I kept hearing noises almost as if an animal was in the room. And I went to see what it was all about, and then I found the most graphic and screwed up scene ever. Sandro was covered in blood and seemed to be eating something. And I took a better look and noticed what he was eating was huge and had a human form. Sandro didn't care I was looking at him. He just kept eating. I ran to Vincent's room to see if he was okay, but I noticed blood all over his room. And I went back to the living room and stared at Sandro. He looked back at me, and as he took a big bite of something that looked like a leg, he said, "Don't worry. You're not next." I didn't do anything about it. I kept the secret. I don't know why Sandro did that. Was it revenge? Or was he insane? And all I know is that he hasn't done it again. But then again, he hasn't been hungry.